As soon as the village was surrounded by night, the natives fought cold. Not with weapons or fire alone, but with knowledge passed down through countless generations, with patience woven into their bones, and with a quiet determination that understood survival in the Arctic meant accepting the darkness rather than resisting it. You stand at the edge of the settlement now, watching the last sliver of sun disappear below the horizon, knowing it will not return for 4 long months. The air bites your face immediately. It is not the gentle nip of autumn or even the sharp sting of early winter. This is something deeper, more penetrating. The temperature has dropped to -40 degrees, cold enough that your breath freezes before it fully leaves your lips, forming tiny ice crystals that tinkle softly as they fall to the ground. You pull your fur hood closer, feeling the wolverine trim brush against your cheeks. The elders chose wolverine fur for this purpose specifically because it does not collect frost from your breath the way other furs do. You turn back toward the village. 14 dwellings sit in a rough circle, their shapes barely visible now in the deepening twilight. Smoke rises from each one, thin ribbons that climb straight upward in the still air before disappearing into the purple-black sky. The absence of wind is both blessing and curse. Without wind, the cold feels slightly more bearable. But without wind, the smoke hangs low, and breathing becomes more difficult inside the homes. Your name is Thomas, and you are 28 winters old. You were born in this village, as was your father before you, and his mother before him. The knowledge of surviving the polar night lives in your body as much as in your mind. You know without thinking which direction to walk to reach the ice fishing holes. You know by the texture of snow under your boots whether it is safe to cross. You know the taste of the air that means a storm approaches. Behind you, someone calls out. It is Sarah, her voice muffled by the layers of caribou hide wrapped around her face. She is checking the food caches one final time before true darkness settles. Every family has contributed to these communal stores: dried fish and seal meat, rendered fat, berries preserved in oil. The caches are built on raised platforms to keep them away from hungry animals, and they are checked daily despite the cold. You walk toward her, your footsteps crunching on snow that has been packed hard by weeks of freezing temperatures. Each step requires effort. The cold makes everything more difficult. Your muscles work harder to generate heat. Your lungs labor to warm the frigid air. Even thinking seems to slow down, as if your mind itself is fighting against the freeze. But this is home. This is the only life you have known. Sarah's dark eyes meets yours as you approach. She is older than you by 5 winters, a skilled hunter, and the village's primary navigator across the ice. "The stores are good," she says quietly. "We have enough to last through the darkest months if we are careful." You nod, conserving energy. Speaking too much in this cold wastes body heat and moisture. The elders taught you this when you were young. Every action in the polar night must be weighed against its cost in warmth and energy. Together you return toward the center of the village where a larger fire burns. This is the communal fire, tended day and night by a rotation of watchers. It serves as a gathering point, a source of warmth for those who must work outside, and a beacon for anyone who becomes disoriented in the darkness. The fire is built inside a stone circle, with a windbreak of stacked ice blocks arranged in a semicircle around it. Around this fire, the village gathers as the last light fades. There are 43 people in total. 16 are children, ranging from infants to young teenagers. 20 are adults in their working years. 7 are elders, their faces mapped with the lines of countless winters survived. Each person wears layers of carefully prepared furs and hides, caribou and seal, bear and fox, layered in specific ways to trap heat while allowing moisture to escape. Elder Margaret raises her hand, and the soft murmuring of conversation fades. She is the oldest among you, 72 winters, her face weathered, but her eyes still sharp and clear. "The long night begins tonight," she says, her voice carrying clearly in the cold, still air. "We know what we must do. We have survived this darkness before. We will survive it again." Her words are not dramatic. They are simply true. The village has existed in this location for over 200 years. And before that, the ancestors lived in similar settlements nearby. The knowledge of polar night survival is ancient, tested, refined through generations of experience. But would their knowledge be enough this year? The gathering continues as people share final preparations. John, the primary ice fisherman, reports that he has cut 20 new holes in the ice, each one marked with a tall stick so they can be found even in total darkness. Elizabeth, who manages the oil lamps, confirms that they have sufficient seal oil to maintain light in each dwelling throughout the winter. Robert, the village's healer, reminds everyone to watch for signs of cold injury and to report any unusual symptoms immediately. You notice young William, barely 10 winters old, sitting close to his mother. His eyes are wide as he listens to the elders speak. This is his first polar night that he will remember clearly. The previous ones occurred when he was too young to understand what was happening. Now he is old enough to feel fear, to recognize the severity of what lies ahead. Margaret notices him too. She moves closer and places a weathered hand on his shoulder. "The darkness is long," she tells him gently, "but it is not evil. It is simply winter's truth in this place. We do not fight against it as if it were an enemy. We move with it, adjust to it, find our rhythm within it." Her words seem to calm the boy slightly. You remember similar words spoken to you when you were his age, frightened by the thought of months without sun. The wisdom of accepting rather than resisting has served the village well. As the gathering disperses, people returning to their individual dwellings for the night, you pause for a moment to look up at the sky. Stars are emerging now, brilliant and cold against the deepening black. The aurora begins to dance on the northern horizon, green ribbons that pulse and wave like living things. Some of the old stories say the aurora are the spirits of ancestors dancing to keep the living company through the long dark. You do not know if this is true, but the lights comfort you regardless. You head toward your own dwelling, a structure built half underground for insulation, with walls of stone and sod, and a roof of driftwood covered with layers of hide and snow. Your family waits inside. Your wife, Anna, your daughter, Emma, who is 6, and your son, Peter, who is 3. They are already in their sleeping furs, around the small stone lamp that provides both light and a modest amount of heat. The entrance tunnel is narrow and low. You crawl through it, feeling the temperature change immediately as you move from the outside air into the relative warmth of the dwelling's interior. Inside, the temperature is perhaps 20 degrees warmer than outside. Still well below freezing, but livable with proper furs and the body heat of 4 people in a small space. Anna looks up as you enter. Her face shows the strain of the preparations, but also the quiet strength that drew you to her 8 winters ago. "Everything is ready," she says simply. You nod and move to your place on the sleeping platform. The platform is raised off the ground, with a layer of dry grass underneath for insulation, then layers of caribou hide, then the sleeping furs that will cover your family through the night. Emma watches you with solemn eyes. "Papa," she asks quietly, "will the sun really not come back for so long?" You settle beside her and pull the furs up around both of you. "The sun will come back," you tell her. "It always does. But first it must rest. And while it rests, we rest too. We slow down, stay close together, and we wait." She seems satisfied with this answer and snuggles closer. Peter is already asleep, his small body radiating surprising warmth. You arrange the furs carefully, ensuring no gaps where cold air could seep in. The stone lamp flickers, its flame fed by seal oil that Elizabeth distributed earlier. The light is gentle, casting soft shadows on the stone walls. Anna begins to hum quietly, a traditional song about patience and endurance. Her voice is soothing, and you feel your own breathing begin to slow, falling into the rhythm that will carry you through the months ahead. But outside, the temperature continues to drop. The night deepens, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the first howl of wind beginning to rise. The storm was coming after all. You listen to the wind's approach, lying very still beneath the firs. At first, it is only a whisper, a soft movement of air that barely touches the dwelling's entrance. Then it grows, building into a low moan that circles the village like something alive and searching. Anna stops humming, her body tensing slightly beside you. You reach for her hand beneath the firs and squeeze gently, a wordless reassurance. The wind hits fully perhaps 10 minutes later. The dwelling shudders, the hide covering on the roof snapping sharply before the weight of snow packed on top holds it down. The sound is sudden and violent compared to the previous stillness, like a living thing throwing itself against your shelter. Emma whimpers softly, and you draw her closer, letting your body warmth comfort her. This is the pattern of polar nights in this region. Periods of deathly calm followed by savage storms that can last for days. The elders say the storms are actually helpful because they bring snow that insulates the dwellings further, burying them until only the entrance tunnel remains visible. A well-buried dwelling stays warmer than one exposed to the air. You close your eyes and focus on breathing slowly, conserving energy. The storm cannot harm you here if you remain inside and patient. The dwelling has weathered countless storms before this one. The stones are thick, the construction solid, the design refined over generations to shed wind and hold warmth. But sleep does not come easily as the wind screams outside. Your mind drifts to the tasks that await when the storm passes. The ice fishing holes will need to be cleared of new snow. The communal fire will need to be rebuilt if it has been buried. The food caches will need to be checked to ensure no damage occurred. Every storm creates work, but work in the polar night must be done slowly and carefully to avoid exhaustion and cold injury. Anna's breathing deepens beside you, and you know she has managed to find sleep despite the noise. Children have the gift of sleeping through anything once they feel safe, and both Emma and Peter snore softly, their small bodies completely relaxed. You envy them this ability. Your mind refuses to quiet, cycling through mental lists of supplies, of techniques, of contingencies. The stone lamp flickers, drawing your attention. The flame dances with each gust of wind that finds its way through tiny gaps in the structure. You watch it for a long time, letting its movement hypnotize you. The elders taught you to use flames as meditation objects during the long dark, allowing your mind to settle by focusing on the light's gentle sway. Gradually, very gradually, you feel your thoughts begin to slow. The storm's roar becomes background noise, no longer alarming, simply present. Your breathing synchronizes with Anna's, and the warmth of your family's bodies mingles under the furs until you cannot tell where your heat ends and theirs begins. You think briefly of the other families in their dwellings, all of them listening to the same storm, all of them wrapped in similar furs, all of them breathing the same cold air. The village is a collective organism, each family a vital cell, all of you functioning together to survive what no individual could survive alone. This thought comforts you more than you expected. The storm howls through the night, but inside your dwelling, beneath layers of fur and hide, surrounded by the people you love most, you finally drift toward sleep. The darkness outside is complete, but here in this small space, there is light enough, warmth enough, hope enough. For now, that is all that matters. The storm continues for 3 full days. You know this not by seeing light or dark, for both look the same now, but by the careful counting of sleep periods and the number of times you have eaten from your personal food stores. Time becomes strange in the polar night. Without the sun to mark its passage, you must rely on internal rhythms and disciplined routines to maintain any sense of order. On what you believe is the morning of the 4th day, the wind finally begins to subside. The change is gradual, a lessening of pressure rather than a sudden calm. You wait another several hours before deciding it is safe to venture out. Anna helps you prepare, layering additional furs over your regular clothing, ensuring your face is completely covered except for a small gap around your eyes. The entrance tunnel is partially blocked with drifted snow. You dig through it slowly, using a flat piece of bone as a shovel. The snow is powdery and light, evidence of the extreme cold that continues outside. When you finally emerge, the world has transformed. Snow has buried everything to a height of perhaps 4 feet. The other dwellings are visible only as low mounds, marked by the smoke holes that have been kept clear by the occupants from inside. The communal fire area is completely buried, though you can see where several people are already digging to reach it. The sky above is still black, but the aurora provides enough light to see by, casting everything in a strange green-blue glow. You make your way toward the communal area, following a track that someone else has already broken through the fresh snow. Walking in another person's footsteps is an important survival technique, conserving energy by allowing them to do the work of compacting the snow. You will take your turn at the front of the line later, breaking new trail so that others can follow easily. Sarah is at the fire site, working with John to clear away the snow. She looks up as you approach, her face barely visible within her fur hood. "Everyone survived," she says, her voice muffled. "I have checked all 14 dwellings. No injuries, no problems." This is good news. Storms can be dangerous if someone is caught outside or if a dwelling fails in some way. But the village's preparations held, as they almost always do. Together, the 3 of you work to rebuild the communal fire. First, you must dig down to the original stone circle. Then you must find wood that has been protected from the snow, kept in special storage areas. The wood is precious, brought from the tree line hundreds of miles to the south during the summer months. Every piece is used carefully, split thin to make it last longer. John produces a small bow drill and a piece of dry fungus for tinder. Despite the cold, he manages to create an ember within a few minutes, his movements practiced and efficient. The ember is transferred to the tinder, which is coaxed into flame with gentle breaths. Small twigs are added, then larger pieces, until finally a proper fire burns within the stone circle. The warmth is immediate and wonderful. You hold your hands toward it, feeling the heat penetrate through your mittens. Other villagers emerge now, drawn by the sight of flames, each person taking their turn at the warmth before returning to their own tasks. Margaret appears, moving slowly but steadily through the snow. She surveys the fire with approval. "Well done," she says simply. Then she turns to address the growing group. "We must establish new routines now. The storm has shown us we are truly in the deep winter. From this point forward, we work in shifts. No one goes out alone. Everyone accounts for everyone else. She assigns tasks with practiced efficiency. Some will maintain the fire in rotating shifts. Others will clear paths between dwellings. A team will check the food caches. Another will work on the ice fishing holes. You are assigned to the fishing team with John and a young woman named Catherine. The three of you gather your equipment: ice chisels, hooks made from bone, line made from braided sinew, and a seal gut container for carrying fish. The walk to the fishing area takes nearly an hour, though in summer it would take perhaps 15 minutes. The snow makes every step an effort, and the cold drains energy quickly. When you reach the first fishing hole, you find it completely frozen over. This is expected. You take turns with the ice chisel, breaking through the new ice layer. The hole is about 2 feet in diameter, and the ice has refrozen to a thickness of perhaps 6 inches. Your arms ache by the time you break through to the water below. The water is black and cold, but not frozen despite the air temperature. Salt water freezes at a much lower temperature than fresh water, allowing marine life to continue even in these extreme conditions. You lower a hook baited with a piece of old fish, letting the line play out until you feel it hit bottom. Then you raise it slightly and wait. Ice fishing in the polar night requires patience that transcends normal patience. You might wait for hours before feeling the gentle tug that indicates a fish has taken the bait. The cold makes waiting difficult. You must move constantly, shifting your weight, flexing your fingers and toes, breathing in controlled patterns to maintain body heat without exhausting yourself. But would the fish bite at all in such cold? Catherine pulls up the first fish after perhaps 90 minutes. It is a small cod, barely 8 inches long, but it is food. She dispatches it quickly with a sharp blow to the head, then adds it to the container. The three of you continue working, moving from hole to hole, each person taking turns fishing while the others move to stay warm. By the end of what you estimate is a 6-hour shift, you have caught 9 fish. It is not a large harvest, but it is adequate. Combined with what the other teams will catch over the following days, it will supplement the stored food and help the village make it through the darkest months. The return journey is harder than the outbound trip. You are tired now, and the fish add weight to your load. But you follow the trail you broke earlier, and the presence of your companions gives you strength. You fall into a rhythm, one foot in front of the other, breathing steadily, not allowing yourself to think about the distance remaining. When the village finally comes into view, marked by the glow of the communal fire, you feel a surge of relief that surprises you. You have only been gone for perhaps 8 hours, but it feels much longer. The darkness makes every journey feel like an expedition to the edge of the world. Anna meets you at your dwelling's entrance. She helps you remove your outer furs, which are stiff with frozen breath and frost. Inside, the stone lamp still burns, and Emma and Peter are playing a quiet game with small carved figures. The normalcy of the scene moves you unexpectedly. You show Anna the fish. She nods approvingly and begins preparing them immediately, cutting them into strips that will be smoked over the lamp's flame. Nothing is wasted. The heads and bones will be boiled to make broth. The skin can be used for various purposes once dried. That evening, the family eats together, and the food tastes better than it should. The fish is not fresh by normal standards, having been frozen and thawed, but it is protein and fat and salt, all things the body craves in this environment. Emma eats her portion with unusual focus, and Peter imitates her, though he understands little beyond the fact that food means warmth and energy. After the meal, Anna tells the children a story, one of the traditional tales about how the first people learned to survive in the far north. Her voice is soft but clear, and both children listen with rapt attention. You listen too, though you have heard this story countless times. There is comfort in the familiar words, in the knowledge that this same story has been told for generations, each telling adding another link to the chain that connects you to your ancestors. As the children finally drift toward sleep, you lie back on the furs and stare at the dwelling's ceiling. The stone lamp creates dancing shadows, and you can hear the wind beginning to rise again outside, though not with the fury of the previous storm. This is a gentler wind, almost conversational in its tone. You think about the months ahead. There will be many more fishing expeditions, many more storms, many more days and nights that blur together in the endless darkness. There will be challenges you cannot yet anticipate, but there will also be moments of warmth, of connection, of quiet beauty in the aurora's dance and the stars' cold brilliance. The village will endure, because it always has, and you will endure because you have no other choice, and because the people around you give you reason to continue. This knowledge settles into your bones like the cold, becoming part of you, shaping how you move through the world. Outside, the polar night presses against the dwelling, but inside there is still light, still warmth, still life continuing in its patient, determined way. And that is enough for another day survived. The days and nights blend together in a way that would be disorienting if you allowed yourself to think about it too deeply. Instead, you focus on the routines that Margaret and the other elders have established. Wake at the designated time, marked by an internal clock honed over years of practice. Eat a small meal from your personal stores. Check on neighbors. Perform assigned tasks. Return to your dwelling. Eat again, sleep, repeat. The routines are not meant to be interesting or varied. They are meant to conserve energy, maintain social bonds, and ensure survival. Novelty is dangerous in the polar night because it requires adaptation, and adaptation requires energy that might be needed for more critical purposes. But within the routines, there are small moments of beauty that you learn to recognize and treasure. One such moment comes during your shift maintaining the communal fire. You are alone in the deep darkness. The only sounds your own breathing and the soft crackle of flames. The aurora is particularly active tonight. Curtains of green and purple light sweeping across the sky with unusual intensity. You watch them while feeding small pieces of wood to the fire, and you feel something shift inside you. It is not happiness exactly. Happiness seems like too light a word for this environment. It is more like a deep, grounded sense of being exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you are meant to do. The cold is severe. The darkness is profound. But you are alive and functional and part of something larger than yourself. These moments of clarity come more frequently as the weeks pass. The initial fear and tension of the polar night's beginning give way to a kind of meditative acceptance. You learn to move more slowly, to speak less, to find satisfaction in small accomplishments rather than grand achievements. The fishing teams develop greater efficiency. They learn which holes produce more reliably, which times of day, or rather, which periods of the darkness cycle yield better catches. The harvest remains modest, but it is consistent enough to ease concerns about the food stores lasting through to spring. Elizabeth, the keeper of lamps, shows you something interesting one day. She has been tracking the consumption of seal oil, making small marks on a piece of driftwood to record how much each lamp uses over time. Her calculations suggest that the village has approximately 30% more oil than will be needed to last through the darkness. This buffer is reassuring, but she cautions against becoming wasteful. The margin between enough and not enough is always smaller than we think, she reminds you. The children adapt to the polar night in ways that surprise you. Emma, who you worried might become frightened or depressed, instead develops an intense fascination with the aurora. She watches it through the smoke hole whenever possible, describing the colors and patterns she sees. Peter, too young to fully understand what is happening, seems content as long as his parents are present and food appears when he is hungry. But not everyone adjusts so well. Robert, the healer, begins making regular rounds to check on people's mental states. The polar night can affect minds as much as bodies. Some people become withdrawn, speaking less and less until they barely communicate at all. Others become irritable, snapping at small frustrations. A few develop what the elders call the darkness sickness, a profound melancholy that can be dangerous if not addressed. One man named David, perhaps 35 winters old, begins to show signs of this sickness. He stops attending his shifts at the communal fire. He remains in his dwelling for longer and longer periods. His wife, Maria, speaks to Robert with concern, and Robert speaks to Margaret, and Margaret organizes a small gathering at David's dwelling. You are invited to attend along with several others. The gathering is gentle, not confrontational. People sit around David's lamp and tell stories, share food, and speak of spring's eventual return. No one addresses David's withdrawal directly. Instead, they simply demonstrate through their presence that he is not alone, that the community has not forgotten him. The intervention seems to help. Over the following days, David begins emerging from his dwelling again, participating in tasks, speaking more readily. The darkness sickness has not completely left him, but it has loosened its grip enough for him to function. This incident reminds everyone that survival is not only physical. The mind must be tended as carefully as the body. Margaret increases the frequency of communal gatherings, creating opportunities for people to come together, share songs, tell stories, play simple games. These gatherings serve no practical survival purpose in an immediate sense, but they maintain the social fabric that makes collective survival possible. You find yourself looking forward to these gatherings more than you expected. There is something profound about sitting in a circle with your neighbors, the stone lamps creating a warm glow, voices rising and falling in conversation and song. In these moments, the polar night feels less like an enemy to be endured and more like a challenge that you are facing together, each person supporting the others. Sarah teaches the children a tracking game using small stones and patterns drawn in the snow inside one of the larger dwellings. The game helps them develop observational skills that will be valuable when they are old enough to hunt and navigate on their own. But more importantly, it gives them something to focus on beyond the darkness and cold. John begins carving small figures from pieces of driftwood and whalebone, creating miniature animals and people. He works during his rest periods, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the cold. The figures are given to children and adults alike, small gifts that serve no practical purpose but bring unexpected joy to those who receive them. Anna develops a growing friendship with Catherine, the young woman who fishes with your team. The two of them often sit together during communal gatherings, speaking in low voices, occasionally laughing softly. You are glad for this. Anna's social circle has been smaller since Peter was born, and the company of another woman near her age seems to lift her spirits. Your own friendship with John deepens through the long hours spent fishing together. He is older than you by perhaps 10 winters, quiet and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that emerges unexpectedly. He teaches you techniques for reading the ice, for finding the subtle signs that indicate where fish might be gathering below the frozen surface. The ice tells you everything if you know how to listen, he explains one day, running his hands over the surface. Thickness, temperature, currents below, all of it leaves marks. You try to see what he sees, to read the ice as he does, but the skill eludes you. It is knowledge that comes only with years of patient observation. Still, you are learning, and the learning itself gives you purpose beyond mere survival. The weeks continue to pass, measured not in days but in fishing shifts, in meals shared, in tasks completed. You lose count of exactly how long you have been in darkness. It might be 6 weeks, it might be 8. Time has become something fluid and uncertain, marked more by internal changes than external measures. But one day you notice something different. The cold, which has been brutally consistent, feels minutely less severe. The change is so slight that you wonder if you are imagining it. You mention it to no one, afraid of giving false hope. Yet over the following week, the trend continues. The temperature is still far below freezing, still dangerous, but it has climbed from perhaps -50 to -40. The aurora seems brighter somehow, the stars clearer. Or perhaps it is only your eyes adapting to the darkness, learning to extract more information from minimal light. Margaret notices the change too. She does not announce it broadly, but speaks to small groups, preparing them for what she believes is coming. "We are past the darkest point," she says quietly. "The turn has happened. The days are beginning to lengthen, even if we cannot see it yet. Spring is still far away, but it is no longer impossibly distant." This news spreads through the village in whispers, and you can feel the collective mood shift slightly. People move with marginally more energy. Conversations last a bit longer. The gatherings become more animated. But Margaret also warns against premature optimism. "The hardest time is often not the deepest darkness," she reminds everyone, "but the period just after, when we know relief is coming, but it has not yet arrived. We must maintain our discipline. We must continue as we have been. The cold can still kill us if we become careless." Her warning proves prescient because the very next day, a crisis emerges that tests everything the village has learned. Catherine does not return from a fishing expedition. She went out with a small team in the morning, or what passes for morning, in the endless night. The team was supposed to return after 6 hours. 7 hours pass, then 8, then 10. The other team members return, reporting that Catherine was with them at the fishing holes but disappeared during the return journey. "We were following the marked trail," one man explains, his voice tight with worry and guilt. "Catherine was behind me. I looked back and she was there. I turned forward to watch the path. When I looked back again, perhaps 5 minutes later, she was gone." A search party is organized immediately. You volunteer without hesitation. Sarah leads the team, her skills as a navigator making her the obvious choice. She brings along 6 people, including you, John, and a young man named Thomas, who has the sharpest eyes in the village. You prepare carefully, knowing that this search could last many hours. Extra furs, extra food, a seal gut container of water, fire-starting materials, emergency shelters made of hide. Sarah checks each person's equipment personally, ensuring nothing has been forgotten. The search begins along the fishing trail, retracing the route the original team took. The marked path is clear, stakes driven into the snow at regular intervals. But snowdrifts can obscure these markers, and in the darkness, even a well-marked trail can become confusing. Sarah moves slowly, stopping every 100 yards to scan in all directions. She calls out Catherine's name regularly, though the cold makes shouting difficult and painful. The rest of the team spreads out in a line, maintaining visual contact with each other while covering more ground. An hour passes with no sign, then 2 hours. The cold begins to penetrate even your heavy furs. You flex your fingers constantly to keep blood flowing. Stamp your feet when you stop moving. Breathe in careful rhythms to preserve warmth. Young Thomas spots something after perhaps 3 hours of searching. A disturbance in the snow, off to the side of the main trail. The team converges on the spot. Sarah examines the marks carefully. "She left the trail here," Sarah says quietly. "These are boot prints, recently made. She walked in this direction." "Why would she leave the trail?" you ask. Sarah shakes her head. "Disorientation, perhaps. In total darkness, even experienced people can lose their sense of direction. Or she might have seen something and went to investigate." The team follows the tracks. They lead away from the trail in a line that seems almost purposeful, as if Catherine was walking towards some specific goal. But the tracks show none of the wandering pattern you would expect from someone who was lost and confused. The trail leads toward a rock outcropping perhaps half a mile from the main path. And there, huddled against the rocks with her furs pulled tight around her, you find Catherine. She is alive, but in severe condition. Her face is pale, almost gray. Ice has formed on her eyelashes and around her mouth. She is shivering violently, which Sarah says is actually a good sign. It means her body is still trying to warm itself. If she had stopped shivering, it would indicate a much more dangerous stage of cold injury. Sarah works quickly but carefully. She wraps Catherine in additional furs, forces her to drink a small amount of water, speaks to her in a calm, steady voice. "Catherine, can you hear me? Nod if you understand." Catherine manages a weak nod. "Can you walk?" A shake of the head this time, very slight. Sarah makes a decision. "We build an emergency shelter here. We warm her slowly. Moving her in this condition could be fatal. John and Thomas gather snow blocks. We build an igloo. The rest of you work on warming stones." The team moves into action. You have practiced building emergency igloos many times, but have never needed to construct one in a real crisis. Your hands shake slightly. Whether from cold or stress, you cannot tell. But the training holds, and within 40 minutes, a small dome-shaped shelter sits against the rocks. Catherine is moved inside carefully. A small lamp is lit, its flame weak but steady. Sarah arranges the warming stones, heated in fire-starting kits, around Catherine's body, careful to wrap them in hide so they do not burn her skin. The interior of the igloo begins to warm, rising from perhaps -40 to -20 within an hour. Sarah sends 2 team members back to the village to report what has happened and to bring additional supplies. The rest of you settle in for what might be a long wait. Catherine's condition improves slowly. The color begins to return to her face. Her shivering lessens as her core temperature rises. After several hours, she can speak, though her words are slurred and difficult to understand. "Saw light," she whispers. "Thought it was village. Followed it. Got lost." Sarah and you exchange glances. There was no light other than the aurora, which is never in one fixed location. Catherine must have become disoriented and mistaken the aurora's glow for the communal fire, or perhaps she experienced the early stages of hypothermia, which can cause hallucinations. "You are safe now," Sarah tells her. "Rest. We will get you home." The supplies arrive from the village after another 2 hours. Fresh furs, hot broth in a sealed container that has stayed warm, more oil for the lamp. Margaret herself has come, despite her age, wanting to assess Catherine's condition personally. She examines the young woman carefully, checking her extremities for frostbite, looking at her eyes, asking questions to assess her mental clarity. Finally, she nods. "She will survive," Margaret says, "but she was very close to not surviving. Another hour alone in the cold, and we would have been searching for a body, not a person." The journey back to the village is slow and careful. Catherine is wrapped in multiple layers and carried on a sledge improvised from driftwood and hide. The entire trip takes nearly 6 hours, with frequent stops to rest and to ensure Catherine remains stable. When you finally reach the village, people emerge from their dwellings despite the late hour and cold. They gather around the communal fire as Catherine is brought to her dwelling, where her family waits with blankets and warmth and tears of relief. Margaret addresses the gathered villagers in the firelight. "This could have ended differently," she says bluntly. "Catherine made a mistake, following what she thought was light when it was not. But we all make mistakes in the darkness. What saved her was the search party acting quickly and correctly, and Catherine herself having the wisdom to stop moving when she realized she was lost, to conserve her energy rather than wander further." She pauses, letting her words sink in. "The polar night has not finished testing us. We must remain vigilant. We must watch out for each other. We must never become so comfortable that we forget how quickly this environment can turn deadly." Everyone nods, the lesson received and understood. But beneath the serious tone, there is also relief and even something like joy. Catherine was found. She will recover. The village remains intact. That night, as you lie in your dwelling with Anna and the children, you think about how close the village came to losing someone. It makes you hold your family a bit tighter, appreciate their warmth and presence more consciously. The polar night demands respect, demands constant attention, but it also teaches the value of community, of preparation, of knowledge passed down through generations. You fall asleep thinking about spring, still months away, but now somehow more real, more believable. The turn has happened. The worst is past. What remains is endurance, patience, and the slow march toward the sun's eventual return. But first, there would be more darkness to survive. The days after Catherine's rescue are marked by heightened awareness and increased caution. Margaret implements new protocols. No one goes out alone under any circumstances. Teams must include at least 3 people, and one person must always be designated as the watcher, whose sole job is to ensure everyone stays together. The marked trails are reinforced with additional stakes, and small emergency shelters are built at regular intervals along frequently traveled routes. You notice the psychological impact of the incident on the community. People are quieter, more focused. The easy camaraderie that had been developing gives way to something more serious. Everyone understands how fragile safety is in this environment, how quickly things can go wrong despite all precautions. Catherine herself recovers slowly. She lost several toes to frostbite, which Robert amputates carefully to prevent infection from spreading. The procedure is done in her dwelling, with Catherine biting down on a leather strip while Robert works with a sharp stone blade. You are not present but hear about it from Anna, who assisted. Despite her injuries, Catherine's spirit remains strong. "I am alive," she tells visitors who come to check on her. "I have 8 toes left, which is more than enough for walking. The cold took something from me, but it did not take everything." Her attitude influences others, reminding them that setbacks can be endured, that survival sometimes comes with costs, but remains worthwhile. She becomes something of an inspiration, particularly to the younger members of the village who look to her as an example of resilience. The fishing expeditions continue with renewed discipline. You find yourself moving more carefully, checking and rechecking your equipment, staying constantly aware of your team members' positions. The catches remain adequate, supplementing the stored food and maintaining the village's nutrition levels. Anna takes on a new role teaching the children indoor skills that will serve them when they are older. She shows them how to prepare hides, how to stitch furs using bone needles and sinew thread, how to render fat from seal blubber. The children approach these lessons as games, but they are learning critical survival skills without realizing it. Emma proves particularly adept at stitching. Her small fingers work the needle with surprising precision, and Anna praises her progress. Peter, still too young for such detailed work, instead helps sort materials and learns by watching. You feel a quiet pride watching your children adapt to this life, absorbing the knowledge they will need to survive in this harsh place. John continues his carving, and his collection of small figures grows. He has created an entire village in miniature, complete with tiny dwellings, people, and animals. The children are fascinated by this miniature world, and John allows them to play with the figures under careful supervision. The carvings become the focal point of many gatherings, with children creating stories about the tiny people and their adventures. One evening, Margaret invites you to her dwelling for a private conversation. This is unusual, and you feel both honored and slightly nervous as you crawl through her entrance tunnel. Inside, her dwelling is similar to yours, but decorated with objects that speak to her long life. Carved tools worn smooth by decades of use, decorated containers that probably belonged to her mother and grandmother, a collection of stones with unusual shapes or colors. She offers you tea made from boiled roots and melted snow, flavored with a small amount of precious salt. You sip it gratefully, feeling the warmth spread through your chest. "I am getting old," Margaret begins without preamble. "This might be my last polar night, or it might not be. The body keeps its plans secret. But I want to talk to you about leadership." You say nothing, sensing she has more to say. "The village will need a new elder eventually," she continues, "not immediately, but in time. I have been watching everyone carefully, seeing who has the qualities necessary for this role. Sarah is an excellent navigator and hunter, but she lacks patience with people. Robert is a skilled healer, but too focused on individual problems to see the larger patterns. Elizabeth is wise, but too old already to take on additional responsibilities." She pauses, her eyes meeting yours directly. "You have something that is rare, Thomas. You understand both the practical and the spiritual aspects of survival. You can fish and hunt, but you also watch the aurora with wonder. You maintain discipline, but show compassion. People trust you, and trust is the foundation of leadership in a place like this." You are surprised by her words, uncertain how to respond. "I am only 28 winters," you say finally. "There are others with more experience." "Experience is valuable," Margaret agrees, "but it is not everything. Wisdom can develop in a young person if they are willing to observe and learn. I think you have this quality. So I am telling you now that I will be teaching you things over the coming months, things that every elder must know. How to read weather patterns in the aurora's behavior. How to mediate disputes before they become serious. How to make decisions that affect the whole village when there is no perfect choice." You feel the weight of what she is offering, a responsibility that you are not sure you want, but understand the importance of accepting. "I will learn," you say simply. Margaret nods, satisfied. "Good, we begin tomorrow." The next day, after your fishing shift, you return to Margaret's dwelling. She has prepared a small meal of dried fish and berries preserved in oil. As you eat, she begins to teach. "Leadership in the polar night is different from leadership in summer," she explains. "In summer, a leader must be decisive, must make quick choices because opportunities pass quickly. But in polar night, a leader must be patient, must think carefully about consequences, because every action affects the delicate balance that keeps us alive." She talks for hours, sharing stories from her decades as an elder. Stories of mistakes made and lessons learned, of crises managed well and ones that went badly. She teaches you how to assess the community's psychological state, looking for signs of stress before they become serious problems. She explains the complex relationships between families, the old grievances that occasionally resurface, the alliances that strengthen the village. "We are only 43 people," she says, "but we contain all the complexity of humanity. Pride, jealousy, generosity, love, resentment, hope, all of it exists here in this small circle of dwellings. A good leader acknowledges this complexity rather than trying to simplify it away. Over the following weeks, you spend considerable time with Margaret, learning from her accumulated wisdom. The lessons are not systematic or organized, but rather emerge organically from conversations and observations. You learn to read subtle body language that indicates when someone is struggling. You learn to intervene in disputes, not by taking sides, but by helping people understand each other's perspectives. You learn that sometimes the best leadership is simply being present, showing up consistently, demonstrating through your own actions the values you want others to embody. But would you be ready when the time came to lead? The question haunts you during quiet moments. Leadership seems like such an enormous responsibility, particularly in an environment where poor decisions can cost lives. You share your concerns with Anna one night after the children are asleep. Margaret sees something in you that you do not yet see in yourself, Anna says thoughtfully. Trust her judgment. She has kept this village alive through countless winters. She knows what leadership requires. Her confidence in you is touching, and it steadies your nerves somewhat. You realize that leadership is not about having all the answers or never feeling doubt. It is about being willing to carry the weight of responsibility when others cannot, about making the best decisions possible with imperfect information, about caring deeply about the community's welfare. As the lessons with Margaret continue, you begin to notice changes in how you observe the village. You see patterns you did not see before, the way certain families always help each other, the way some individuals withdraw when stressed while others become more active. You start to understand the village not as a collection of individuals, but as a complex system where every part affects every other part. One day, Sarah approaches you after a fishing expedition. Margaret is teaching you, she observes. It is not a question. You nod. Good, Sarah says. You will be a worthy successor. I say this even though I know I was considered for the role and not chosen. Margaret made the right decision. You have qualities I lack. Her honesty surprises you. You are one of the strongest people in this village, you tell her. Your skills have saved us countless times. Yes, she agrees without false modesty. I can navigate ice and track animals and survive conditions that would kill many others. But I do not have your patience with people. I become frustrated when others cannot perform as I do. That frustration would make me a poor leader. The conversation leaves you thoughtful. Sarah's self-awareness is impressive, and her endorsement strengthens your confidence. If even those who might have wanted the leadership role support your training, perhaps you truly are suited for it. The weeks continue their slow march. The cold remains severe, but the incremental warming trend persists. The temperature climbs from -40 to -35, then eventually to -30. It is still brutally cold, still dangerous, but the trajectory is encouraging. The fishing catches improve as the water temperature rises slightly. Marine life becomes more active and the teams bring in larger harvests. The food stores, which were carefully managed throughout the darkest period, now have a comfortable buffer. Starvation is no longer a concern. Margaret calls a community gathering to share news. We are past the halfway point, she announces. The sun will return in approximately 8 to 10 weeks. We have food, we have oil for our lamps, we have lost no one. We will survive this polar night. The gathering responds with quiet satisfaction rather than open celebration. Everyone knows that 8 to 10 weeks is still a long time, that challenges remain, that the cold can still kill if they become careless. But there is a palpable sense of hope, a feeling that the worst is truly behind them. That night, you dream of the sun. You dream of golden light warming your face, of shadows cast by objects in daylight, of colors beyond the blue-green of aurora and the white of snow and ice. You dream of Emma and Peter playing outside in actual sunlight, of the sound of melting water, of the smell of earth freed from its frozen prison. You wake feeling surprisingly rested, and you carry the dream's warmth with you throughout the day. It is a reminder of what you are surviving for, of what waits on the other side of the darkness. The polar night is not yet over, but its end has become imaginable. The final weeks of the polar night bring a subtle but unmistakable change to the village. People move with more energy, speak more freely, smile more often. The oppressive weight of the deepest darkness has lifted, replaced by anticipation of the sun's return. But Margaret continues to caution against carelessness, and her warnings prove wise. A minor crisis emerges when one of the food caches is discovered to have been raided by a polar bear. The animal somehow climbed the support posts and tore through the protective covering, consuming perhaps 20 pounds of dried fish. The loss is not catastrophic, given the improved fishing catches, but it is concerning. Polar bears are among the Arctic's most dangerous predators, and one that has learned to associate the village with food could become a persistent threat. A hunting party is organized, with Sarah leading the effort to track and potentially kill the bear. You join the hunt along with 5 other experienced hunters. The team moves carefully, following tracks in the snow that show the bear's enormous size, easily 800 pounds, perhaps more. The hunt takes 2 days. The bear proves elusive, moving across the ice with surprising speed despite its bulk. Sarah reads the signs expertly, predicting the animal's likely route, positioning the hunters to intercept. When the confrontation finally comes, it is sudden and violent. The bear appears from behind an ice ridge, massive and ghostly white in the aurora's glow. It rises on its hind legs, standing perhaps 9 feet tall, roaring a challenge that seems to shake the air itself. The hunters respond with disciplined coordination, launching spears from multiple directions simultaneously. Several spears strike true, but the bear's thick hide and layers of fat make clean kills difficult. It charges the nearest hunter, a man named Michael, who barely manages to dive aside. The bear's claws rake the ice where Michael had been standing, leaving deep gouges. You move in from the side, driving your spear toward the bear's chest. The weapon penetrates, and the bear wheels toward you. Its eyes are dark and intelligent, and for a moment you feel a strange connection with this creature, another survivor in this harsh environment. Sarah's spear takes the bear in the throat, and finally its strength begins to fail. It drops to all fours, blood steaming in the cold air, and after a few more moments, it dies. The hunters stand in silence for a moment, respecting the animal that fought so fiercely for its life. Then, practical concerns take over. The bear represents a massive amount of valuable resources: meat, fat, hide, bones that can be carved into tools. Nothing will be wasted. The work of butchering takes hours in the extreme cold. Each person's hands grow numb despite the heavy mittens. You take turns warming yourselves at a small fire built in a protected spot while others continue the work. By the time you finish, you are exhausted but satisfied. The bear that threatened the village has been eliminated, and its body will provide resources that will improve everyone's quality of life. The return to the village is triumphant despite the fatigue. The bear meat is distributed among all families, a welcome addition to the diet. The fat is rendered into oil that will extend the lamp fuel supplies. The hide is claimed by Sarah as the hunt leader, and she immediately begins the long process of preparing it for use. That evening, a feast is held around the communal fire. The bear meat is roasted, and for the first time in months, people eat until they are completely full. There is even enough to save portions for later, smoked and frozen for future meals. John produces a drum made from stretched hide and begins a rhythmic beating. Others join in with voices, singing traditional songs that speak of successful hunts and survival through long winters. Children dance around the fire, their movements casting wild shadows in the firelight. Even Emma and Peter participate, too young to know the songs but moving to the rhythm with unself-conscious joy. You sit beside Anna, watching the celebration unfold. Margaret sits across from you, her weathered face illuminated by the flames. She catches your eye and nods slightly, a gesture that says, "This is what we survive for." Not just the physical continuation of life, but these moments of community, of shared triumph, of beauty found in a harsh world. The celebration continues late into what would be night if there were any distinction between day and night. Eventually, people begin drifting back to their dwellings, sated and happy in a way that has been rare during the polar night. The weeks that follow bring more signs of approaching spring. The temperature continues its gradual rise. The aurora becomes less frequent, suggesting changes in the Earth's magnetic field that correlate with seasonal shifts. The ice begins to make different sounds, subtle creaks and groans that experienced listeners recognize as early indicators of the thaw that will come. Margaret teaches you to listen to these sounds, to interpret the ice's language. The ice tells you when it is solid and safe, she explains, but it also tells you when it begins to weaken. This knowledge can save your life when you are traveling across frozen sea. You also learn more about the social dimensions of leadership. Margaret shows you how to mediate a dispute between two families over a misunderstanding about shared resources. She demonstrates how to help someone struggling with the darkness sickness without making them feel weak or ashamed. She teaches you the delicate art of making decisions that benefit the community as a whole, even when they might disadvantage specific individuals. Leadership is not about being liked, she tells you bluntly. It is about being trusted. People must believe that you have the village's best interests at heart, even when they disagree with your specific choices. One day, Margaret asks you to lead a village meeting in her place. She is not ill, but wants to observe how you handle the responsibility. The meeting addresses routine matters, planning for the expected spring thaw, discussing hunting strategies for when daylight returns, assigning maintenance tasks for equipment that will be needed soon. You feel nervous at first, but the training Margaret has provided serves you well. You facilitate discussion without dominating it, ensuring all voices are heard while keeping the conversation focused and productive. Decisions are reached through consensus, with you summarizing agreements and clarifying action items. After the meeting, Margaret approaches with a rare smile. "You did well," she says simply, "better than I did at my first meeting as leader." Her approval fills you with quiet pride. As the weeks advance, a new phenomenon begins. At what would be noon if the sun were visible, a faint glow appears on the southern horizon. It is not true daylight, but it is not complete darkness either. It is twilight, growing slightly brighter and lasting slightly longer each day. The first time Emma sees this twilight, she becomes very excited. "Papa, the sun is coming back!" she exclaims. "Not yet," you tell her gently, "but soon. What you see is the sun's promise that it has not forgotten us." The twilight period grows from a few minutes to half an hour, then to an hour. Colors begin to reappear in the world, faint at first, but unmistakable. The ice is not pure white, but shows hints of blue and gray. The sky has gradations of purple and indigo. The village dwellings, which have been shadowy shapes for so long, reveal details of their construction that were invisible in the darkness. People respond to the increasing light with renewed vitality. Work crews tackle projects that were postponed during the deepest darkness. Dwellings are repaired and reinforced. Equipment is overhauled and prepared for the active season ahead. The fishing shifts become almost pleasant, as the twilight allows people to see clearly what they are doing. Catherine, recovered from her ordeal, though still adapting to walking with fewer toes, begins working again. She cannot do heavy labor, but takes on tasks like preparing fish, maintaining lamps, and watching the youngest children while their parents work. Her presence reminds everyone of how close the village came to tragedy and how important it is to remain vigilant until the sun fully returns. Margaret's health begins to decline slightly. Nothing dramatic, but she tires more easily and sleeps longer. Robert checks on her regularly, and she waves away his concerns. "I am old," she says matter-of-factly. "Old people get tired. It is natural." But she continues your leadership training with undiminished intensity, as if aware that time might be limited. She shares stories you have not heard before, personal stories about her own doubts and failures, about times she made mistakes that cost the village resources or opportunities. The honesty is valuable, showing you that leadership does not mean being perfect, only being committed and willing to learn from failures. One day, she tells you about a polar night decades ago when the village nearly starved because the hunting was poor and the stored food ran out faster than expected. "We survived by eating things we normally would not eat," she recalls. "Leather from old clothing, boiled for hours to make it soft enough to chew. Bones crushed into powder and mixed with snow to create a kind of paste. It was awful, but it kept us alive until the hunting improved." "How did you maintain morale when things were so desperate?" you ask. "Honesty," she says immediately. "I told everyone exactly how bad things were, what our options were, what we needed to do. People can endure almost anything if they understand why they must endure it and believe their leaders are being truthful. What they cannot endure is being lied to or kept in the dark about their own situation." This lesson resonates deeply. You understand that trust is built through transparency, through sharing both good news and bad, through treating people as partners in survival rather than subjects who need to be managed. The twilight continues to brighten and lengthen. 2 hours, then 3, then 4. The aurora becomes less dominant as the natural twilight competes with it. Stars that were brilliant in the complete darkness now seem dimmer against the growing ambient light. And then, on what you calculate is approximately the 100th day since the sun disappeared, something changes. The twilight is brighter than usual, and there is a quality to the light that feels different. You are at the fishing holes with John when you notice it. "The sun is about to return," John says quietly, staring at the southern horizon. You look where he is pointing. The glow there is stronger, more focused. It has a golden quality that the previous twilight lacked. As you watch, the glow intensifies, and then, for just a moment, a sliver of brilliant gold appears on the horizon. The sun, actual sunlight, for just a few seconds before it dips below the horizon again. But those few seconds are enough. The light is real. The sun has returned. You and John stand in stunned silence, tears forming in your eyes and freezing on your cheeks. The moment feels profound beyond words, a promise fulfilled, a cycle completed, hope vindicated. You return to the village quickly to share the news. People gather at the communal fire, and you describe what you saw. Margaret nods with satisfaction. "Tomorrow it will last longer," she predicts. And the next day, longer still. The polar night is over. We have survived. The celebration that night is more emotional than the feast after the bear hunt. People who have maintained stoic composure for months allow themselves to express the fear and stress they have been carrying. Tears flow freely, but they are tears of relief and joy rather than sorrow. Emma and Peter stay up past their normal sleep time, too excited to rest. Emma asks a dozen questions about what the sun will look like, how warm it will be, what will happen when it returns. You answer patiently, sharing your own anticipation and excitement. That night, lying in your dwelling with your family, you feel something shift in your chest. The weight you have been carrying, the constant low-level anxiety about survival, begins to lighten. The polar night has not been overcome. You did not fight it or defeat it, but you have endured it. You have moved through it with patience and discipline and community support. And now you emerge on the other side, changed but intact. Anna takes your hand in the darkness. "We did it," she whispers. We did, you agree. Outside, the darkness is less complete than it has been for months. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the sun waits to rise, to flood the world with light and warmth, to transform the frozen landscape into something that can support abundant life once again. But that transformation will come slowly, in its own time, following rhythms that human beings cannot control and must only accept and adapt to. The lesson of the polar night is not that you can master this environment, but that you can survive it through preparation, knowledge, community, and patience. These lessons will serve you not only in the Arctic, but in all of life's challenges, you reflect. Every darkness eventually gives way to light. Every winter eventually surrenders to spring. The key is enduring through the difficult times, maintaining hope even when circumstances make hope seem foolish, and supporting those around you so that everyone survives together. The sun's return is not the end of the story, but rather a transition point. There will be other polar nights, other challenges, other tests of endurance. But you are ready for them now in ways you were not before. The darkness has taught you, and the lessons will remain with you. You close your eyes, feeling sleep approach, and your last thought before drifting off is one of gratitude. For Anna and the children, for Margaret's teaching, for the village that held together through the longest night, for the sun that never truly abandoned you, only rested for a while before returning. Tomorrow the sun will shine a little longer, and the day after, longer still. Spring is coming, carrying with it renewal, growth, and new possibilities. But tonight, you rest in the knowledge that you have survived, that you are stronger than you knew, that darkness is not the end of the story, but only a chapter in a much longer tale. The final weeks of winter pass in a flurry of activity and preparation. Each day, the sun climbs higher and stays longer. The first day, it is visible for perhaps 10 minutes. Within a week, it shines for an hour. Within 2 weeks, there are several hours of genuine daylight, and the temperature begins to rise more noticeably. The ice starts to change in ways both beautiful and dangerous. During the day, the sun's warmth creates a thin layer of meltwater on the surface. At night, this refreezes into a glassy coating that makes walking treacherous. The village adapts by changing travel times, moving early in the morning before the sun has created slippery conditions. The wildlife begins to return. Birds appear first, hardy species that can survive in the transitional cold. Then, seals become more common around the fishing holes, drawn by the increasing activity of fish responding to changing light and temperature. A few caribou are spotted in the distance, the first signs of the herds that will migrate through the area in the coming months. Margaret's health continues its gradual decline. She is not seriously ill, but simply worn down by the long winter and her advanced age. She spends more time resting and less time moving around the village. But her mind remains sharp, and she continues to teach whenever you visit, sharing knowledge and wisdom with an urgency that suggests she knows her time is limited. Leadership is not about being the strongest or the smartest, she tells you during one visit. It is about being present, about showing up consistently, about caring deeply about people's welfare even when they frustrate you. If you remember nothing else I have taught you, remember that. You promise her you will remember everything she has taught you. One morning, you emerge from your dwelling to find genuine daylight, not twilight or the faint glow of returning sun, but actual, unmistakable daylight. The sky is blue, the same blue you remember from summer, and everything is illuminated clearly. You can see individual faces from 100 yards away. You can distinguish colors, reds and browns and greens in clothing and equipment. The world has gained dimension and detail that were invisible during the polar night. Emma and Peter are ecstatic. They run around in the daylight, chasing their own shadows, marveling at how objects cast darkness on the ground. They have lived through polar nights before, but they were too young to remember clearly. For them, this feels like a magical transformation. The fishing becomes dramatically more productive as the extended daylight allows for longer shifts and better visibility. The catches are so good that the village begins building new stores for the coming winter, setting aside dried fish and preserved seal meat while food is abundant. The temperature climbs above freezing during the warmest part of each day, though it still drops well below freezing at night. The dwelling roofs begin to drip, and small streams of meltwater appear around the village. These are carefully directed away from the dwellings to prevent flooding. Sarah organizes hunting parties to go after the returning caribou. The hunts are successful, bringing in fresh meat that tastes incredible after months of stored and frozen food. The caribou hides are valuable too, needed to replace worn furs and to make new clothing for children who have outgrown their old garments. Anna and several other women begin the labor-intensive process of preparing the new hides, scraping off fat and flesh, stretching them on frames, treating them with oils to keep them supple. The work is hard but satisfying, a tangible sign that life is returning to normal patterns. The children, freed from the confinement of the polar night, become almost wild with energy. They play elaborate games across the village, build snow forts that are more ambitious than anything possible in the darkness, and explore the surrounding area under careful supervision. Their laughter becomes a constant backdrop to daily life, a sound that everyone finds cheering. Catherine approaches you one day with a proposal. "I want to lead a scouting expedition," she says. "We should check the traditional summer camps, see what condition they are in after winter, begin planning for the seasonal migration." Every year, the village moves to different locations depending on the season, following game animals and positioning themselves near productive hunting and fishing grounds. The winter location is chosen for shelter and defensibility. The summer location is chosen for access to resources. You consider her request. Catherine has proven her resilience, but she is still adapting to reduced mobility from her toe loss. However, denying her the opportunity might damage her confidence and sense of purpose within the community. "You can lead the scouting expedition," you tell her, "but Sarah goes with you as second in command, and you take 6 people total. No chances, no risks. Survey and report, nothing more." Catherine agrees immediately, grateful for the trust. The expedition departs 3 days later, equipped for a week-long journey. They return slightly early, reporting that the summer camps survived the winter in good condition and that the migration route appears clear. The village begins to prepare for the move, which will happen in approximately 4 weeks when the weather has warmed further and travel becomes easier. Equipment is checked and repaired, food is packed carefully. Plans are made for how to transport the youngest children and the elderly, including Margaret, whose health makes the journey concerning. But Margaret seems energized by the approaching change, as if the thought of one more migration gives her purpose. She oversees the preparations with her characteristic attention to detail, ensuring nothing is forgotten, nothing left to chance. One evening you sit with her in her dwelling, discussing the final aspects of the migration plan. When business is concluded, she looks at you with an expression you cannot quite read. "I am proud of you, Thomas," she says quietly. "You have learned well. When I die, the village will be in good hands." You want to protest, to say she has many more years, but the words die in your throat. She is right. Her body is failing, slowly but unmistakably. She might have another year, another 5 years, but probably not many more than that. "I am not ready to lead," you admit. No one ever is, she responds. Leadership is not something you become ready for in advance. You become ready by doing it, by making decisions and living with their consequences, by caring more about the community than about your own comfort. You have these qualities. Trust yourself. The conversation continues late into the evening, covering topics beyond leadership. She talks about her long life, about the husband she lost 40 years ago, about children who died young, and grandchildren who survived. She speaks without obvious sadness, simply sharing her story, placing it into your keeping. When you finally return to your own dwelling, Anna is waiting up despite the late hour. Margaret spoke to you about leadership, she observes. It is not a question. Yes, you confirm. She is preparing you for her death, Anna says gently. She knows it is coming and wants to ensure you are ready. I am not sure I can carry that weight, you confess. Anna takes your hand. Then I will help you carry it. We will all help you carry it. Leadership does not mean bearing everything alone. It means organizing the village so that everyone carries their share of the weight together. Her words comfort you, and you realize she is right. Margaret has not been training you to become a solitary leader who makes all decisions independently. She has been training you to facilitate collective leadership, to help the village govern itself through consensus and shared responsibility. The final weeks before migration pass quickly. The sun now shines for nearly 18 hours each day, and the temperature regularly climbs above freezing. The snow begins to melt in earnest, revealing the ground beneath for the first time in months. Patches of brown earth appear, and the first brave plants begin to emerge, tiny green shoots that will grow rapidly in the continuous daylight of Arctic summer. The village packs systematically, with each family responsible for their own belongings, but working cooperatively to transport communal supplies. Sledges are loaded with equipment, food, and those who cannot walk easily. The migration will take 3 days, moving slowly to accommodate everyone's pace. The day of departure arrives. The village gathers one final time at the winter camp, sharing a meal and offering thanks for surviving another polar night. Margaret speaks briefly, her voice weaker than usual but still carrying authority. We came through the darkness together, she says. We lost no one. We maintained our bonds as a community. Now we move forward into the light, carrying the lessons the darkness taught us. Walk with purpose, support each other. Remember that we are stronger together than any of us are alone. The migration begins under clear skies and bright sun. You walk near the front, helping to break trail through the wet, heavy snow. Anna and the children are in the middle of the group, where they are protected and can move at a comfortable pace. Margaret rides on a sledge, wrapped in furs despite the relative warmth, her eyes alert and watchful. The journey is challenging but beautiful. The landscape is transforming daily, winter's grip loosening visibly. Small streams flow where everything had been frozen solid for months. Birds circle overhead, calling to each other in languages of their own. The air smells different, carrying hints of life and growth rather than only cold and ice. On the second night of the migration, camped in a protected valley, Margaret calls you to her. She is weaker now, the journey taking a toll despite the sledge ride. I will not see the summer camp, she tells you calmly. My body is failing. I wanted you to know, to prepare. You feel tears form, but you do not let them fall. What should I do, you ask. What you have been trained to do, she responds. Lead. The village will grieve, but they will look to you for stability. Provide it. Mourn with them, but do not let grief paralyze the community. Life continues. The work continues. That is the way. She pauses, breathing slowly. There is no ceremony needed when I die. Return my body to the earth in the traditional way. Speak words about my life if you wish, but do not make it elaborate. I was simply one person in a long line of people who have kept this village alive. Others will come after you and after them. This is the true immortality, not as individuals, but as a community that endures. You sit with her through the night, along with Sarah and Robert and several others who have been close to her. She drifts in and out of sleep, occasionally speaking words that make sense, and occasionally murmuring things that seem drawn from dreams or distant memories. As dawn breaks on the third day of migration, Margaret passes quietly. Robert confirms what everyone already knows, that her heart has simply stopped, worn out after 72 years of life in one of Earth's harshest environments. The village grieves, but as Margaret predicted, the grief does not paralyze them. You organize the burial, selecting a spot overlooking the valley, with a view to the south where the sun now arcs high across the sky. The body is wrapped in her finest furs and placed in a shallow grave, covered with stones to protect it from animals. People speak briefly about what Margaret meant to them, sharing memories and expressing gratitude for her leadership. Emma and Peter stand close to you during the ceremony, confused by the sadness, but understanding that something important has happened. You place a hand on each of their heads, a silent promise that you will continue to protect them, to maintain the stability that Margaret worked so hard to create. After the burial, the village continues the final hours of migration to the summer camp. The mood is somber, but there is also an underlying current of acceptance. Death is part of life in the Arctic, as natural as the changing seasons. Margaret lived long and well, and she died surrounded by people who loved and respected her. The summer camp is as the scouts reported, intact and ready for occupation. People claim their traditional spots, and within a day, the village has reorganized itself for the summer season. Fishing nets are deployed in the now open waters. Hunting parties range out in search of game. Women gather plants that are beginning to grow. Children play in the continuous daylight, staying up late because the sun never truly sets. You establish yourself in what was Margaret's traditional dwelling, not because you need a larger space, but because it has become expected that the elder will occupy this location. Anna and the children adapt to the new arrangement, and gradually it begins to feel like home. Leadership responsibilities increase as summer brings new challenges. Disputes arise over hunting territories and resource allocation. You mediate these conflicts using techniques Margaret taught you, seeking consensus rather than imposing decisions. The village gradually accepts you in the leadership role, not because you claim authority, but because you demonstrate competence and genuine care for everyone's welfare. Sarah becomes your closest advisor, her practical knowledge complementing your more diplomatic approach. Robert continues as the village healer, teaching you aspects of his craft so that knowledge is not concentrated in one person. Elizabeth manages the increasingly complex food storage systems required to preserve summer's abundance for next winter. As the summer progresses, you find yourself thinking often about the polar night just survived. The darkness that seemed endless eventually gave way to light. The cold that seemed insurmountable eventually gave way to warmth. The challenges that seemed overwhelming were managed through patience, preparation, and community cooperation. These lessons extend beyond the Arctic. They are fundamental truths about resilience and survival. Every difficult time eventually passes. Every challenge can be endured with proper support. Every darkness contains the seeds of its own ending. One evening, you stand at the edge of the camp, watching the sun make its shallow arc across the northern sky. Anna joins you, slipping her hand into yours. "Do you think we will survive next winter?" she asks. "Yes," you answer without hesitation. "Not because it will be easier, but because we know how. We have done it before. We will do it again." She leans against you, and you stand together in the continuous daylight, feeling the warmth on your faces, grateful for this moment of peace and beauty. The polar night will return eventually. The darkness will come again. But so will the light, so will the warmth, so will the village's endurance and strength. This is the cycle. This is the way. This is how humans survive in Earth's most extreme environments. Not by conquering nature, but by learning to move with its rhythms, to accept its terms, to find meaning and purpose in the endless dance of darkness and light, cold and warmth, challenge and endurance. The village lives on, as it has for generations, as it will for generations more. And you are now part of that continuity, a link in the chain that connects past and future, darkness and light, death and life. The polar night tested you and found you sufficient, and that knowledge will carry you through whatever challenges lie ahead. Thank you for listening to this story of survival, patience, and community in one of Earth's most challenging environments. If you enjoyed this journey through the Arctic polar night, please subscribe to our channel for more stories of endurance, resilience, and the quiet strength humans find in the face of extreme challenges. Ring the bell to be notified when we share our next story. Until then, stay warm, stay connected to those you love, and remember that every darkness eventually gives way to light.